My name is Adrian Moreau. I was a husband. A father. A man who believed in loyalty. I worked hard, built a future, and trusted the people I loved. But one night, everything I believed in was shattered. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was cheating on me with my own brother. They thought they had won. They thought I would be too broken to fight back. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. Because when I take a hit, I don't just get back up, I take everything. And when I was done with them, they had nothing left. I met Isabel 11 years ago, back when I was 24. It was in a dimly lit bar called the Iron Fox in Chicago, the kind of place where people drown their regrets and trade their past for a few hours of relief. She stood out immediately, tall, graceful, with dark wavy hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through you. She was confident, fiery, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and own it. The kind of woman men fought over. And that night? She looked at me. Back then, I thought it meant something. We got married fast, too fast, maybe. But when you're young, you think love is enough. You believe in the fairy tale, in the promises whispered in the dark. I built a life for us. A home. A future. We had 2 sons, Julian and Leo, my whole world. I worked long hours running my private security firm, Moreau Protection Services. It wasn't just a business, it was my legacy. I had built it from the ground up, making sure the wealthiest, most powerful people in the country stayed safe. My job was about spotting danger before it struck. Ironic, isn't it? Because the greatest threat to my life wasn't some criminal lurking in the shadows. It was the woman sleeping beside me every night. Looking back, the signs were there. Isabel started going out more. She claimed it was girls' nights, new fitness classes, late-night, self-care outings. But she had never cared about working out before. Her phone never left her hand. She became distant. Distracted. Different. And my younger brother, Ethan? He started acting strange too. He'd cancel plans at the last minute. Avoid family gatherings. Make excuses that never quite made sense. I should have seen it. But I was blind. I trusted them both completely. Until the night that changed everything. It was supposed to be a routine business trip. I had flown out of town for a security training seminar, something standard, something I had done 100 times before. But at the last minute, the deal got postponed. So instead of staying overnight, I took the last flight home, thinking I'd surprise Isabel. The real surprise? It was waiting for me inside my own house. As I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. Ethan's car was parked down the street, half hidden in the shadows. For a second, my brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe he had just dropped by to check on Isabel. Maybe I was imagining things. But then I saw it. The dim glow of our bedroom light. And in that moment, I just knew. My entire body went cold. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stepped out of the car. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard it. A low moan. A breathless laugh. A whisper. I climbed the stairs slowly, my breath shallow, my hands clenched into fists. And when I pushed open the bedroom door, there they were. My wife. My brother. Together. In my bed. Ethan saw me first. His smug, cocky grin vanished in an instant. His entire body tensed like a trapped animal. But Isabel? She did something that made my stomach twist. She smiled. Not in fear. Not in shame. But in relief. As if she had been waiting for this moment. As if she wanted to get caught. Adrian, she breathed, pulling the sheets around her. I can explain. Explain? Explain what? That she had been sneaking around with my brother for months? That she had thrown away our family, our marriage, for a cheap thrill? Ethan scrambled to put on his clothes. Look, man, this doesn't have to be a big deal, I turned to him. And for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing. Not rage. Not sadness. Just clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't punch him. I didn't break a single thing. I just smiled. Get out, I said quietly. Ethan hesitated, like he wanted to argue. Then he saw the look in my eyes and bolted. Isabel stayed frozen in place, watching me with wide, panicked eyes. What are you going to do? She whispered. I grabbed my bag. My watch. And I walked out. Because I wasn't done with them yet. Not even close. I walked out of that house without looking back. Not because I was weak. Not because I was running away. But because I knew something Isabel and Ethan didn't. Revenge is best served cold. The night air was sharp against my skin, but I barely noticed it. My mind was racing. My heart was pounding. But my face? Calm. Ethan had run out like a coward. Isabel had stayed behind, probably thinking I'd come back. That we could talk things through. But there was nothing left to talk about. I got in my car and started driving. Nowhere in particular. Just, away. I gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The betrayal burned in my chest, but I didn't let it consume me. Not yet. Before I knew it, I had stopped in front of a hotel. I checked in. Took a long, scalding shower. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. It buzzed. Isabel, 12 missed calls. Ethan, 4 messages. I didn't open them. Instead, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the storm inside me settle. Because tomorrow? Tomorrow, I would make them regret everything. I built my career on strategy and patience. My private security firm wasn't just about protecting the rich. It was about identifying threats before they became problems. And now? Isabel and Ethan were my biggest threats. So I did what I did best. I eliminated them. By sunrise, I had already made my first move. I made a call to a financial contact. Ethan had always relied on me for business deals, money, and connections. He thought being my brother meant he had a safety net. He was about to learn how wrong he was. By noon, I had started the process of erasing him from every contract, every deal, and every investment he had used my name for. Ethan Moreau was about to become financially invisible. And Isabel? She had spent years living off my money. She thought she was untouchable. She had lived in my house. Spent my money. Raised our kids while playing the perfect wife. All while betraying me. But what she forgot was, that house was mine. By the afternoon, I had called my lawyer. The house had always been in my name. With a few quick legal maneuvers, I ensured that Isabel had exactly 7 days to pack her things and leave. By evening, my phone rang again. I picked up. Adrian, what's happening? Isabel's voice was shaking. The bank just called me. They said, I cut her off. You have 7 days. 7 days for what? To get out of my house. Silence. Then a desperate, broken whisper. Adrian, you don't mean that. I smiled. Watch me. Ethan had always been the type of guy who could talk his way out of anything. But money? Money doesn't care about smooth talk. That afternoon, he walked into his office like he always did, expecting everything to be fine. Instead, he found his bank accounts frozen. Every single one. His assistant looked at him, panicked. "Sir, the funds are gone. Every investor has pulled out." Ethan's face turned pale. He grabbed his phone, dialing my number. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then I picked up. "Adrian, bro, listen, I don't know what's happening, but we need to talk," I laughed. "You think this is bad?" I said. "You have no idea what's coming next." Then I hung up. And Ethan? Ethan finally understood. He had made the worst mistake of his life. Isabel thought she had secured her future when she married me. A rich, successful husband. A beautiful home. Stability. Now? She had 1 week left before she was homeless. That evening, I drove by the house. She was standing in the doorway, waiting for me. The moment she saw my car, she ran up, her face pale, her eyes filled with tears. "Adrian, please, you can't do this." I walked past her. The house was filled with memories, our kids' drawings on the fridge, family portraits on the wall, furniture she had picked out. None of it felt like home anymore. I turned to her. "You should start packing." Tears spilled down her face. "Adrian, what about the kids?" I smiled. "The kids stay with me." Her breath hitched. "No. No, you can't." I held up a folder. "Full custody. Already filed." She reached for the papers, her hands shaking. She scanned through them, her face crumbling with every word. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. I nodded. "Then I'll let the sheriff escort you out." Isabel collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. And for the first time since I caught them together, I felt nothing. The night before Isabel's eviction, something unexpected happened. I was working late at my office when my assistant buzzed in. "Sir, you have a visitor." I frowned. "Who?" A pause. "They won't say their name. But I think you should come see for yourself." Annoyed, I stood up and walked to the front lobby. And there, standing in the dim light, was Isabel. She looked different. Disheveled. Her once polished appearance replaced by desperation. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Please. I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms. "Talk fast." She swallowed hard. "Ethan's missing." I stared at her. "And that's my problem because..." She took a shaky breath. "I think something happened to him." I should have felt something. Concern. Worry. But all I felt was curiosity. "Why do you think that?" I asked coldly. Isabel hesitated. "Because someone broke into my hotel room last night. They left a note." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I took it from her and unfolded it. One line was scrawled across the page. "You took everything from me. Now it's my turn." I read the note again. "You took everything from me. Now it's my turn." Slowly, I lifted my eyes to Isabel. She looked terrified. Good. She should be. I folded the paper, slipping it into my pocket. "Where did you find this?" I asked. She swallowed. "It was slipped under my hotel door. Sometime after midnight." I studied her for a moment. "Are you sure Ethan didn't leave town?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I haven't seen him in 2 days. He stopped answering my calls." For the first time since I had walked in on them together, I felt a flicker of something other than anger. It wasn't sympathy. It wasn't regret. It was interest. Because someone was playing a new game. And I wanted to know who. I leaned against my desk, arms crossed. And why exactly are you bringing this to me? Isabel hesitated. Because you're the only person who can figure this out. I smirked. You mean the only person left who cares? Her face fell. Adrian, I know you hate me, but Ethan, he's still your brother. No, I corrected. He was my brother. Now? He's just another guy who made some bad choices. Her lips trembled, but I didn't care. Still, something wasn't sitting right. Ethan wasn't smart enough to pull something like this. If he wanted revenge, he'd be drunk dialing me at 2 a.m., spewing some pathetic excuse. But this? This felt calculated. Planned. And that meant someone else was involved. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. Yeah. It's Moreau, I said. I need a trace on someone. Ethan Moreau. Last known whereabouts, financial activity, anything. A pause. Something happen? I glanced at Isabel, who was wringing her hands. Just find him, I said. And then I hung up. I turned back to Isabel. Go back to your hotel. Lock your doors. If someone wanted to hurt you, they'd have done it already. If Ethan shows up, don't call me, call the police. She flinched. Adrian, I'm done cleaning up his messes, I snapped. Her breath hitched, but she nodded. And then, without another word, she walked out of my office. I barely got an hour of sleep that night. Something was gnawing at me. Ethan was a liar, a backstabber, a thief. But he wasn't dangerous. So why did this feel like something more? The next morning, my contact called me back. I've got something, he said. Your brother's been withdrawing cash, large amounts. No digital trails. Last known transaction was at a motel in the south side of Chicago. I frowned. How much cash? Over 10 grand in the last 3 weeks. I stiffened. Ethan never had 10 grand to his name. And if he did, he wouldn't be blowing it on motels. Something was wrong. Text me the address, I said. And then I grabbed my car keys. The motel was exactly what I expected, run down, neon lights flickering, the kind of place where no one asked questions. I pulled into the lot and stepped out. The air smelled like cheap cigarettes and regret. I walked to the front desk. The clerk barely looked up from his newspaper. Room 214, I said. Ethan Moreau. The man popped his gum. And you are? I slid $100 bill across the counter. He looked at it. Then at me. And then he pocketed the cash. Second floor, end of the hall. The door was locked. No sounds from inside. I knocked once. Nothing. Twice. Still nothing. A bad feeling crawled up my spine. I pulled out a lockpick and got to work. 30 seconds later, the door clicked open. And that's when I saw it. Blood. On the carpet. On the walls. A smear across the doorframe. The sheets were half ripped off the bed, like someone had been dragged. The room was trashed. And Ethan? Gone. I stood in the middle of the wreckage, taking it all in. Someone had taken Ethan. And judging by the mess, it hadn't been voluntary. A part of me should have felt something, worry, panic, anger. But all I felt was frustration. Because now, instead of enjoying the slow destruction of my brother's life, I had to clean up another one of his disasters. I pulled out my phone and dialed Isabel. She picked up immediately. Did you find him? No, I said. But someone else did. Silence. Then, a shaky breath. What does that mean? It means Ethan was taken. And from the looks of it, not gently. I heard her inhale sharply. Adrian, what do we do? I glanced around the ruined motel room. Glass shards. Blood smears. The faint metallic scent of something wrong. I repeated. Her voice cracked. Please. If you won't do it for him, then do it for me. I clenched my jaw. For her? After everything? Hell no. But for some reason, I didn't hang up. Instead, I said, pack your things. I'll pick you up in an hour. And then I ended the call. Because whether I liked it or not, someone had just dragged me into a new game. And I wasn't the kind of man who played to lose. I picked Isabel up an hour later. She was waiting outside her hotel, her suitcase beside her. The moment she saw my car, she hurried over, her face pale and tight with fear. I didn't get out. I didn't offer to help with her bag. I just popped the trunk. She hesitated. Probably expecting some kind of warmth, some reassurance. She wasn't going to get it. With a shaky breath, she tossed her suitcase in and climbed into the passenger seat. I pulled away without a word. For the first 10 minutes, she didn't speak. Then, finally, where are we going? I kept my eyes on the road. Back to the motel. She shifted uneasily. Did you call the police? I let out a humorless laugh. The police don't care about guys like Ethan. And even if they did, do you really want them digging through his finances? His choices? She flinched. She knew exactly what I meant. Ethan had always been reckless, but if he was withdrawing cash like that, he was into something bad. Something the cops would have no problem throwing him in jail for. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to the motel. I killed the engine and turned to her. You stay in the car. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. Her hands clenched in her lap. Adrian, I'm not saving him for you, Isabel. I didn't wait for a response. I stepped out and walked inside. The room was exactly how I had left it. Blood on the carpet. Shattered glass. The scent of iron still thick in the air. But now, there was something new. A message. Scrawled on the wall in red. At first, I thought it was blood. But as I stepped closer, I realized, it was spray paint. And 3 words were written in large, jagged letters. I exhaled slowly. Ethan had gotten himself involved with someone dangerous. And now? He was paying the price. I scanned the room, looking for clues. The broken lamp. The kicked-over chair. Whoever took him was in a hurry. Which meant Ethan had something they wanted. And whatever it wasn't money. If it was, they would have killed him on the spot. They needed him alive. For now. I pulled out my phone. Dialed another number. A few rings, then a sharp voice answered. Yeah. It's Adrian. I need information on a debt collector. Someone willing to rough people up. A pause. Then a low chuckle. That's a long list, Moreau. You got a name? I glanced at the spray-painted words again. No, I admitted. But I've got a signature. I walked back to the car. Isabel was gripping the edge of the seat, her nails digging into the fabric. She looked up at me, her green eyes searching mine. Did you find anything? I leaned against the hood of the car. Yeah, I said. Ethan owed someone a lot more than just money. She swallowed. What do you mean? I stared at her. And then I said the words that made her face drain of color. I think Ethan stole something. I watched Isabel carefully. She was hiding something. The way she bit her lip, the way her fingers twisted the hem of her jacket, she knew more than she was telling me. Ethan didn't just owe money, I said, keeping my voice calm. He stole something. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. But it was enough. You want to tell me what it was? She swallowed hard. I don't know. I tilted my head. Try again. Her hands clenched. Adrian, I swear, Isabel, I cut in, my voice turning sharp. If you're lying to me, I will walk away right now. And whatever happens to Ethan? I shrugged. That's on you. Her breath hitched. She knew I meant it. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, finally, Ethan mentioned something a few weeks ago, she murmured. About a job. He said it was a sure thing. Easy money. No risk. My jaw tightened. Ethan's idea of no risk usually meant extremely illegal. And? Isabel hesitated. I didn't ask questions. I didn't care. We weren't, she stopped herself. I just thought he was being reckless. Like always. I exhaled slowly. That was the problem with people like Isabel. They always assumed things wouldn't touch them. Until they did. I pulled out my phone and called my contact. Tell me you found something. A pause. Then, you're not gonna like it. I stepped away from the car. Go on. Your brother was involved in a theft. Small crew, well organized. Stole something from a private client, someone big. How big? Cartel level big. I froze. Felt the blood in my veins turn cold. Shit. Cartels don't play games. They don't do warnings. They kill first, then ask questions. If Ethan stole from them, he was already dead. Unless they thought he could get them what they wanted. Which meant Ethan wasn't their target. They wanted whoever he was working with. And if Ethan was the weakest link, he was as good as gone. I turned back to Isabel. She looked up at me, eyes filled with fear. Who else was in his crew? I asked. Her face scrunched in confusion. What? The people Ethan was working with, I repeated. Who were they? She shook her head. I don't know. I clenched my jaw. She wasn't lying this time. Ethan had kept her in the dark. But that didn't mean she wasn't useful. You said he told you it was a sure thing, I said. Where? She hesitated. Isabel. She sighed. He mentioned a club. Crimson Room. He said the guy who set it up worked out of there. That was something. A lead. I pulled out my keys and opened the car door. Get in. Her eyes widened. We're going there now. Yes. She hesitated. Adrian, this isn't your problem. You don't have to. I turned to her, my voice cold. I'm not doing this for Ethan. And then I got in the car. After a moment, she followed. The club was in the West Loop district of Chicago. Exclusive. High-end. And apparently, where Ethan had screwed up his life. The bouncer barely glanced at me before letting us in. The place was packed, dark red lighting, low music, people laughing over expensive drinks. But I wasn't here to drink. I was here for answers. And I knew exactly who to ask. I spotted him in the VIP lounge, a man in his mid-40s, well-dressed, expensive watch, the kind of guy who never had to get his own hands dirty. I had dealt with men like him before. I walked straight up to him. He glanced up, mildly interested. Can I help you? You're going to tell me about Ethan Moreau. His eyebrows lifted. Am I? I pulled a chair across from him and sat down. Yes. For a moment, he just studied me. Then, slowly, he smirked. Ah. You must be the big brother. I didn't respond. He leaned back. Ethan talked about you, you know. Said you were the one with all the power. That no matter what, you'd always clean up his messes. I exhaled. If you know that, then you know I'm not here to play games. He chuckled. No, I imagine you're not. Then his expression darkened. But your brother? He played a very dangerous game. I didn't blink. What did he steal? The man gave me a slow, knowing smile. Something that didn't belong to him. The man across from me took a slow sip of his drink, watching me carefully. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I had dealt with men like him before. They loved control. Loved dragging things out. But I wasn't here to play his game. I leaned forward. Cut the theatrics. Tell me what Ethan stole. His smirk didn't fade. You're direct. I respect that. He set his glass down. Your brother, he said lazily, got greedy. He thought he was doing a simple job. Steal a package. Hand it off. Walk away with a nice payday. I didn't react. But what he didn't realize. The man chuckled. He stole something that wasn't meant to be moved. I clenched my jaw. And what exactly was in that package? His eyes glimmered with amusement. You don't need to know that. I exhaled slowly. If I don't know what he took, I can't get it back for you. The man laughed. You think this is about the package? He leaned in, his smirk fading. This is about respect. I didn't flinch. I had been in enough high-stakes negotiations to recognize a power play. But this? This wasn't a negotiation. This was a warning. You're saying they don't want the item back, I clarified. He smiled. Oh, they want it back. Then his smile disappeared. But more than that, they want to make an example out of Ethan. I nodded slowly. So where is he? The man chuckled. If I knew, would we be having this conversation? I sat back in my chair, studying him. He was enjoying this. He had power, but he wasn't the one calling the shots. That meant someone bigger was behind this. Someone more dangerous. And if I wanted to find Ethan, I needed to get to them. I tapped my fingers on the table. Who do I need to talk to? The man smirked again. You don't talk to these people, Mr. Moreau. You survive them. I didn't blink. Where do I find them? He tilted his head, amused. Tell me something, he said. What's your endgame here? I didn't hesitate. I want my brother alive. The man smiled. You're either a fool, or you still have a heart. I didn't respond. He leaned back. Fine. I'll give you a name. Then he glanced at my drink, still untouched. But first, take a sip. I knew what this was. A test. A way to see if I trusted him. I picked up the glass, swirled the liquid once. Then I set it back down. Give me the name. His smirk widened. Smart man. Then he leaned in, his voice a whisper. Lucas Serrano. The name meant nothing to me. But the way he said it? It meant something big. Where do I find him? The man chuckled. You don't find Serrano. He finds you. Then he stood up. Good luck, Mr. Moreau. And with that, he walked away. I slid into the driver's seat. Isabel was already staring at me, her fingers gripping her purse. What did he say? She asked urgently. I started the car. He gave me a name. Her breath caught. Who? I glanced at her. Lucas Serrano. Her face went white. And that's when I knew, she knew exactly who that was. I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. Next to me, Isabel sat frozen, her knuckles white as she clutched her purse. She wasn't speaking. Which meant one thing, she knew exactly who Lucas Serrano was. And she was afraid. Good. She should be. I exhaled sharply. Start talking. She flinched. Don't lie to me, Isabel, I cut in. Not now. Who is Lucas Serrano? She swallowed hard. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he's the man Ethan was working for. I let the word settle. Ethan had been working for a cartel enforcer? That explained a lot. But not everything. I glanced at her. You're going to tell me everything you know about him. Now. She hesitated. Then, with a shaky breath, she said, Lucas Serrano isn't just a man, Adrian. He's a ghost. He doesn't exist on paper. No pictures, no records. But people know him. And the ones who cross him? They don't come back. I kept my face impassive. What else? She licked her lips, visibly struggling. Ethan told me he was just a middleman. A broker. He set up deals, made connections. But the people he worked with. Her voice faltered. They were killers, Adrian. Real ones. And Ethan, she choked on her words. He thought he could outsmart them. I clenched my jaw. Ethan had always thought he was untouchable. That his charm could get him out of anything. But these weren't investors or club owners. These were cartel killers. And Ethan had stolen from them. Which meant one thing, they weren't keeping him alive much longer. I pulled into a dark side street and parked. Then I turned to her. What did Ethan take? Her eyes darted away. I don't know. I grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at me. You know something. Tears welled in her eyes. I swear, Adrian, I don't. He didn't tell me. I studied her face. She wasn't lying. But that didn't mean she was innocent. I let go. Fine. Then we find someone who does. Her breath hitched. What do you mean? I started the car again. We're going to find Serrano. Her face drained of color. That's suicide. I smirked. No. That's negotiation. The address I got from my contact led us to an abandoned warehouse on the south side of Chicago. Classic. The kind of place where people went missing. I parked outside, scanning the area. Isabel fidgeted in her seat. Adrian, stay in the car, I ordered. Her lips pressed together. Then, finally, she nodded. I stepped out. The second I did, a gun cocked behind me. Move slow, a voice warned. I didn't. Instead, I turned around fast, grabbing the guy's wrist and twisting the gun out of his grip. He yelped in pain, but I had him disarmed in 2 seconds. I shoved him back. Take me to Serrano, I ordered. The guy, holding his wrist, gave a dry laugh. You're either crazy or stupid. I smirked. Try both. Inside the warehouse they led me through dark corridors, past armed men who barely gave me a glance. I wasn't important to them yet. But I would be. At the end of the hall, a door opened. And inside? A man sat behind a desk. Late 40s. Dark suit. Scar across his jaw. Lucas Serrano. His cold eyes met mine. Mr. Moreau, he said smoothly. I was wondering when you'd show up. Lucas Serrano leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming lazily against the desk. You came looking for me, he said smoothly. That's rare. I didn't sit. Didn't break eye contact. I want my brother, I said flatly. Serrano's lips twitched. Do you? I kept my face impassive. I want to know if he's alive. Serrano studied me, his dark eyes flickering with something unreadable. Then, with a slow smirk, why? The way he said it told me everything. Ethan was still breathing. For now. But that wouldn't last long. Serrano wanted to know why I cared. And that? That was my advantage. I smirked. Let's just say I have unfinished business with him. Serrano chuckled. So do I. I didn't move. What did he steal? His smirk faded. You don't get to ask questions, Moreau. I raised a brow. I'm the only one willing to clean up this mess. Seems like I should be asking questions. Serrano's jaw tensed. I had his attention now. Good. He let out a slow breath. Your brother took something he had no business touching, he said finally. I didn't blink. I figured that much. Serrano smirked. You're going to love this, then. He leaned forward, voice dropping. Ethan stole from his own crew. I stilled. What? Serrano's eyes gleamed. Oh, yeah. The idiot pulled a job with some very dangerous men. And instead of doing what he was told, he chuckled darkly. He screwed them over. A slow, sinking feeling settled in my gut. This wasn't just about Ethan stealing from Serrano. This was about Ethan screwing over someone even worse. And that meant one thing: Serrano wasn't the only one looking for him. I exhaled. Who's after him? Serrano's smirk widened. You're going to love this, he murmured. Then he leaned back. The Rossetti family. Silence. The name landed like a gunshot in my mind. The Rossettis. One of the oldest crime families in Chicago. The kind of people even the cartels didn't cross. And Ethan had stolen from them. Jesus Christ. I ran a hand down my face. You've got to be kidding me. Serrano chuckled. Wish I was. I exhaled slowly. Where is he? Serrano shrugged. If I knew, he wouldn't be a problem anymore. I studied him. You don't have him? Not yet. Serrano's smirk returned. But the Rossettis? They're real close. I clenched my jaw. That meant one thing. I had less than 24 hours before Ethan disappeared for good. Serrano stood. You want my advice? I didn't answer. He smirked. Let the Rossettis have him. Save yourself the trouble. I stared at him. And for a second, I considered it. I considered walking away. Letting Ethan pay for his own mistakes. Letting the people he betrayed deal with him. But then, I thought of Isabel. Of the look on her face when she realized what was really happening. And, more than that, I thought about me. If anyone was going to decide Ethan's fate, it was going to be me. I stepped closer. Tell me where the Rossettis operate. Serrano's amusement flickered. You're serious. I didn't blink. Where? A slow smirk stretched across his face. Well, Moreau, you've got balls, I'll give you that. Then he grabbed a pen, scribbled something on a napkin, and slid it across the table. I glanced down. An address. West Chicago. An old warehouse district. Exactly the kind of place you'd torture someone in peace. I grabbed the napkin. Serrano chuckled. Good luck, Moreau. Then, with a grin, you're gonna need it. I slid into the driver's seat. Isabel was already gripping the dashboard. Adrian, what did he say? I put the car in drive. He confirmed what I already knew, I muttered. She swallowed. And? I kept my eyes on the road. And now? I exhaled. We're going to find Ethan. She paled. Her voice wavered. Where is he? I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth? The truth wasn't something she wanted to hear. After a long moment, I finally said it. He's in Rossetti territory. She gasped. And that's when I knew, she really understood how bad this was. I parked 2 blocks away from the warehouse. It was in an abandoned industrial district, just like I expected. A place where no one asked questions. Where no one heard screams. Isabel sat frozen beside me, her hands clenched in her lap. Adrian, we shouldn't be here, she whispered. I ignored her. Because we were already here. And I wasn't leaving without Ethan. One way or another. I stepped out of the car. Checked my gun. Then I looked at Isabel. Stay here. She opened her mouth to argue, but one look at my face, and she shut up. She nodded stiffly. Then I turned and walked toward the warehouse. Inside the warehouse the place was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of oil and rust. Voices echoed in the distance. Then, a muffled grunt. I followed the sound, moving through the shadows until I found a large open space. In the center? A metal chair. And tied to it, Ethan. He looked like hell. Bruised. Bleeding. His left eye swollen shut. 2 men stood near him, talking in hushed voices. I stepped into the light. The moment they saw me, their hands went to their guns. Relax, I said coolly. I'm here to talk. One of them narrowed his eyes. You got a death wish, Moreau? Not today. I glanced at Ethan. He was conscious, barely. His head lolled to the side, and when he saw me, he laughed. It was a wet, broken sound. Shit, he croaked. I really am screwed if you're here. I didn't smile. Yeah, I muttered. You are. Before anyone could say another word, footsteps echoed through the warehouse. The men stepped aside. And then, Luca Rossetti walked in. He was in his 50s, but he carried himself like a man half his age. Sharp suit. Cold eyes. The air around him felt dangerous. He looked at me. Then at Ethan. Then back at me. You must be Adrian Moreau, he said smoothly. I didn't respond. He smirked. Your brother has caused me quite a headache. I crossed my arms. I can imagine. His smirk widened. Tell me, Mr. Moreau, why are you here? I glanced at Ethan. The idiot was barely holding on. But his eyes met mine. There was fear there. And shame. For the first time in his life, I think he truly understood what he had done. What it had cost him. I looked back at Rossetti. I want my brother, I said. Rossetti raised a brow. And why would I give him to you? I exhaled. Because this was it. The moment that decided everything. I had 2 choices. I could walk away. Let Rossetti do whatever the hell he wanted with Ethan. Let him pay for his own mistakes. Or I could negotiate. Find a way to take Ethan back without starting a war. I clenched my jaw. Then I said, you don't need him. You need what he stole. Rossetti's smirk disappeared. I had his attention now. You think you can get it back? He asked. Yes. He tilted his head. And why would I trust you? I gave him a cold smile. Because you know who I am. You know what I do. I don't break deals. I don't run from problems. If I say I'll fix this, I will. A long silence. Then, Rossetti chuckled. You're a smart man, Moreau. He turned to his men. Cut him loose. Ethan jerked in surprise. Wait, what? One of the men untied the ropes. Ethan collapsed forward, groaning in pain. I didn't move to help him. Instead, I looked at Rossetti. One condition, he said. I met his gaze. You have 48 hours. If I don't get what I want. His smirk turned deadly. I take your brother piece by piece. I dragged Ethan out of the warehouse, shoving him toward the car. Isabel gasped when she saw him. Oh my God, he's alive, I said flatly. That's enough. Ethan groaned, trying to steady himself. I didn't wait for him to recover. I grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the car. His eyes widened. Adrian, I punched him. Hard. He hit the ground with a grunt, blood dripping from his lip. You almost got yourself killed, I growled. Ethan groaned. You think I don't know that? I crouched down. Where's the package, Ethan? His face twisted. I grabbed his jaw. Where is it? His eyes flickered. Then, finally, it's in a storage locker. Downtown. I stepped back. I should have left him there. Should have walked away. But I didn't. Because as much as I hated him, he was still my blood. I exhaled sharply. Get in the car. Ethan hesitated. Then, slowly, he climbed in. Isabel followed. And me? I got behind the wheel. Because we had 48 hours. And if I was going to save my brother. This wasn't over yet. The storage locker was in a rundown facility on the west side of Chicago. I parked outside, killed the engine, and turned to Ethan. Inside, I said. He hesitated. Then, with a wince, he pushed the door open and stumbled out. Isabel and I followed. The three of us walked in silence down a long corridor. Ethan's footsteps were uneven, his body still wrecked from whatever the Rossettis had done to him. I didn't care. This was his mess. And I was here to end it. We reached the locker. Ethan pulled a key from his pocket, his fingers trembling as he unlocked it. The metal door rolled open with a groan. And inside? A single black duffel bag. I stepped forward and unzipped it. Inside were stacks of cash. A ridiculous amount. But beneath them? Something else. Something far more dangerous. I pulled it out. And the moment I did, Isabel gasped. It was a flash drive. Small. Silver. Harmless looking. But I knew better. This wasn't about money. It was about information. I turned to Ethan. What's on it? He swallowed. I don't know. I punched him again. He hit the floor with a grunt, coughing. I crouched beside him. I'm done with the lies, Ethan. His breath was ragged. Then, finally, it's a list. I narrowed my eyes. A list of what? Ethan wiped blood from his lip. Dirty cops. Judges. Politicians. Everyone who's ever taken money from the Rossettis. Silence. Then, softly, I muttered, Jesus Christ. This wasn't just stolen money. This was a death sentence. For anyone who had it. If the Rossettis knew this was missing, they weren't just cleaning up a loose end. They were erasing history. I exhaled slowly. You were planning to sell it. Ethan hesitated. Then, with a shaky breath, yeah. I clenched my jaw. He was an idiot. A dead man walking. And now? He had dragged me into it. I stood, staring at the drive in my hand. I had three choices. Give it back to Rossetti, walk away, end this now, and let Ethan take the fall. Destroy it, burn the whole thing, erase the evidence, and hope no one finds out. Use it, make a deal of my own. Each option had consequences. One would cost Ethan his life. One would put me in even more danger. And one could change everything. I took a slow breath. Made my decision. And then? I turned to Ethan. And told him his fate.